Welcome to Educating Geeks, the podcast where friends help friends discover new passions. I'm geek host Bri, and in the studio today we also have
Cassie,
Alice,
Megan, and today we are educating Cassie about Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So Cassie, we've talked about Star Wars before, so we've gone over why all of us have seen it or haven't seen it, but can you give us a brief rundown?
Well, I hadn't seen A New Hope, so there was really no point
reason to see
in seeing Empire Strikes Back. And I really don't like jumping into series of films in the middle. I prefer to see it from the beginning. And Star Wars just was never on my radar. So even though I knew of it and respected it as a phenomenon from afar, I just never thought it was necessary to see it.
And what about you, Alice? We know you've seen it before. Can you tell us about your first experience?
My first experience was waiting in line with my crew of guys that I hung out with, that I made them all Imperial uniforms to wear. And I believe I tried to dress as in one of Leia's outfits, but I think people mistaken me for, that doesn't work, as a Jawa, but we won't go into that. But yeah, so I was on board in the thick of it.
I'm speechless.
Yeah. So I was
cosplaying early.
Well, I hung out with a bunch of boys who made movies in their backyards and whatnot, and I had skills even at that age for costuming, and so I would very frequently get pulled in to help with that part of it.
And what about you, Megan?
Well, I grew up watching these movies, although this one was my least favorite one growing up. And I'll talk about it a little bit more later. I won't get too in-depth in it, but I think this one has too many complex emotions for kids to really grasp onto. So as a kid, I would waver between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi being my favorite. But now that I'm an adult, I still kind of waver between this one and Jedi, but this is definitely today it's my favorite because I just watched it. So.
My story is pretty much exactly the same. I grew up watching the trilogy at least twice a year with my brothers and my father. But yeah, just grew up kind of watching it. It was always there. The family was always watching it. So one of the big things regarding the Star Wars movies that always comes up is traditional effects versus the new computer effects that have been put in.
Yeah.
So I watched the version that had newer computer effects. Which version did you watch, Cassie?
I watched both, but I was really just trying to grasp the story for the digitally remastered version or whatever it's called. So I was not, especially since it was only my second time watching, I was not as aware of the differences.
Yeah, I only have the complete saga. So that's the version I watched. That's the version with
all the new stuff.
The new stuff, yeah.
I only watched the theatrical version. I wish I'd had time to compare the two. But I took a lot of notes about Yoda in particular because he's just so amazing as a creature. You know, he's from the Jim Henson Creature Shop. Frank Oz does the puppetry in addition to doing the voice work. And Yoda is just... He's so much more expressive to me. He's so much more of a real touchable character to me. And I feel like maybe I could be reading into this because of my personal feelings, but I feel like Frank Oz does a better job with the character when he's in there being, the puppet master.
So do you mean compared to the first two, 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, now
when
that
he's clearly computer generated.
CG.
Yeah.
And that's my only experience with Yoda. Because I saw those
everything
episodes.
About him is so much better, I think, as a creature as opposed to a digital thing. I
mean, I would agree with you that, and I certainly enjoy that. But we also grew up on The Dark Crystal and
God, what a great
Labyrinth
movie.
and all of that kind of stuff. I think if I were to ask my son, my 8-year-old son, he'd be like, "What are you talking about? He can like do all that jumping around, and he's so badass with his lightsaber and all that kind of stuff." Like a completely different perspective. But I'm with you. I really enjoy the.
But
the
when he
puppetry.
clenches his tiny fist and says, like, luminous beings are we, like, his tiny little fist is actually clenching with passion, and you just can't. And Mark Hamill can actually look him in the eye. You don't have that weird thing where
It's
the
interesting
actor
that
is
you
like
say
looking
that
past
because
it.
I listened to the commentary, and in fact, he was not looking at that little Yoda right in the face. He was actually having to act on his own, just as if he would have been with a CGI character.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know that.
Well,
but I
works
get it. I
better.
mean, I'm
Movie
certainly
magic.
not, because I'm definitely in your camp
Yeah.
with Yoda. I just think that the youth of today that have grown up with a different menu of what they see probably have a different opinion about that.
Well, there's a lot more natural reaction,
Yeah.
which is odd to say, with a puppet than with a CGI creature, because he's pulling his little flashlight that he's found and his prize away from R2-D2 and fighting for it. And when he finally gets it away, he jerks away, and his clothing and everything about him moves in a way that, like, you wouldn't necessarily map out if you were doing CGI.
Well, it's
Like, these
interesting.
days, it's a little bit different because we have Andy Serkis live acting all of the CGI characters that he
Right.
does. But, like, you probably don't necessarily have some little guy like Yoda just walking around like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. I'll jump around and I'll do backflips for you.
He actually like closes that door on R2's front.
Yeah.
Which I love that
Yeah.
tiny little moment. One of the other things that, in addition to just Yoda, one of the other things that had never occurred to me before I rewatched it this time, but as the X-Wing is coming back down out of the swamp, that would totally have been CG today. But that was an actual physical prop that they were lowering down in front of Mark Hamill. He reaches up and touches it when the X-Wing comes down, and that probably would have been CG today.
Sure.
And you see that physical contact, which just it
Again, I
really
always
jumped
end
out
up
at
being
me.
the one trying to defend the CGI, but again, I'm in the same camp. I just think it's an interesting. It's an interesting because again, people watching it today aren't going to be watching it with the same eyes that those of us who grow up with that menu of things on our plate. So
Well, it's also a little bit jarring because CGI has gotten so much better in the
Right.
decade or so since they redid it. So I'm like, well, if you're going to redo it once, like, why not make it even better and a little more seamless?
well, for this one.
Now it's up to Disney.
Yeah.
For this one, I didn't find it as intrusive as with Star Wars with A New Hope, where a lot of those scenes, like you were talking about, where they've got Jabba now in the hangar with Han and all of that kind of stuff, and it really is very jarring. I agree with all of you. In this one, I didn't find it, what they did add, I didn't find it as jarring.
I do recall, I feel like from what I recall from watching the updated ones, it gets less and less jarring. Like, they do less work, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
From the
There's-
first to the second to the
Yeah.
third.
Yeah,
agree
and
as
I
well.
do have a more difficult time figuring out, like, did they figure out how to practically do that? And now it just, like, looks a little too smooth because it was a miniature, or is that CGI? So it does, like, some of it is harder to tell, and some of it just looks like not very good to me.
Again, because I listened to the commentaries, one of the guys who was in the special effects, I did catch him saying, like, oh, that scene, we shot that scene, but it was never in there before. So they definitely did add in shots that
That's
they had done at the
interesting.
time that they added in addition to adding CGI stuff. So that might have been perhaps why you were noticing that.
That's interesting.
So somebody wanted to talk about Hoth and Tatooine.
Yes, I loved the difference between the two. It was really cool to have, and I had seen A New Hope a year prior, but obviously that's a very iconic. There's so much about Star Wars that is iconic, but I think Tatooine's pretty iconic. Also, it was a major player in the first episode, in episode 1, which is what I have familiarity with. So I already knew what Tatooine was, a sandy, African-like planet. But then going to the ice planet and it's just a completely different. It's just as vast, just as beautiful in its own way, but still very isolating. So when you have a character who's trekking across Tatooine or trekking across Hoth, they're this very small being in this vast planet, which also, I was just thinking, could also be symbolic of space, too, where you're this really small being in space.
They really, for me, they remind me very much of those Westerns, where John Ford, I think it is, who does the huge landscape shots with the horses and the little people.
Yeah.
It's very
and that
similar in style.
probably was part of why they did that. Space cowboy situation going on there. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And obviously, they had a bigger budget for this.
Yeah.
So they were able to do something that, obviously the heat and sand, that presents its own issues for equipment and for crew, but snow and ice is way worse for everyone involved, especially for equipment. So when they did that, and I think they shot in, I want to say the Netherlands, but I don't think that's right.
I think it's Norway.
Norway.
That
yeah,
sounds
Norway.
right.
It was an end location. Yeah, Norway. They shot there. I mean, and they had their own issues shooting there when they started out. But it was just cool, I mean, to see how they went from one planet. I was like, oh, I wonder if there's like a green planet out there that's just all grass.
I wonder.
Okay, I guess I know what to look for. Yes, I know what to look for. So that was cool.
It was also interesting to me because we got to see the characters stop being in their cartoon character one outfit. That's what you wear the entire time we see you type thing. And they adapted for each setting that they were in. And that was pretty cool.
Yes. It's nice what a budget will do for you. Yeah, I really enjoyed the costumes in this one because you see so much more. Like the stormtroopers, like you just said, you get to see like 3 different stormtrooper outfits, and Leia gets to change her clothes more than twice or once, however many she does in the first film. So I really enjoy that, and the different cultures, and there was just a lot more going on visually than in the first film. So I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. I especially like her Cloud City outfit.
Yeah, me too.
I wrote down that was my favorite.
Me
Also
too.
the hair. My hair's almost long enough. I think I could pull it off.
The double
not
loopies.
quite, yeah.
Cute.
I definitely can't do like the bunny part on top, like that bun part. But
Oh my gosh, she has so much weave going on all the time.
yeah.
Carrie Fisher on the commentaries talks about how she was happy to get a different hairstyle.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Some of those hairstyles look like they'd hurt so much. They'd just be so heavy.
Was Cloud City in episode 2 or 3? I haven't seen the first. I know there was a lot of tie-in between the.
Did they go back to Cloud City? I don't
think
remember.
so.
I don't
Really?
think so.
So
I
it's
don't think
only
so.
it's only this and I'm assuming Return of the Jedi.
And Cloud
Yeah.
City is on Bespin, right?
I have a feeling
I
that
don't remember.
Cloud City is some kind of factory, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was like a
Yes.
pretty like inconspicuous place until Lando came around. Is the
Right.
impression that I got. So I don't think they ever visited it because without Lando, really, what is it?
Right.
Bunch of scoundrels.
Mr. Smooth.
Yeah, Mr.
Oh
Smooth
my
Talker.
gosh.
Yes.
Lando Calrissian. As soon as she gets off of their ship, he's just like, you truly belong with us among the clouds.
Oh my gosh. I just
What?
threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Totally.
Well, I was like, I would
scene.
slap him.
Yes.
When she comes in, when Han's on the bed and he's doing his big line about inviting them all before he turns them over, and Han is like, he knows this guy, right? And so he's like, he's like turning on the charm again. How ridiculous. It's fun.
Well, and when
Yeah,
he
it was
first meets Leia, it's so hard not to hate love Lando because he says, "Hello, what have we here?"
Oh my
But-
god.
Excuse me,
But
what
have we here? Yeah, in that sleazy, slimy tone of voice. Like, what you have here is a fist in your face.
Exactly. But you
Except there
also
isn't
have
one.
an amazing
Yeah,
cape,
unfortunately.
so what am I supposed to do with
I'm
that?
so torn.
He's so full of charm. Like
Yeah.
it's hard not to fall for it. But also, dude,
Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
she's
No.
a princess, all right? Have some respect.
Well, she kind of acts like a princess in this one.
Oh
She
my
sure
gosh.
does.
I mean, like, she kind of turned into a child for some of these scenes. There was a lot of stuff where I was just like, well, I don't know if this is really character driven or you guys are just trying to do something with the script here.
Well,
Yeah, I agree.
this kind of leads us down the Leia Han road.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning, they're both so angry. And I feel like it's like their sexual tension that neither one of them, Han obviously wants them to do something, but she's definitely fighting against it. I feel like that's why they're so mad, because they're both fighting it for various reasons.
Because she's trying to win a war,
Yeah,
I would say.
kind of, yes.
And they're on a
Like,
nice planet, and
There are more important things going on right now than you and me. Like, sure, we could make out sometime maybe, but like that's
How
not
about
the
later?
meat of that's not the meat of what's going on right now.
you can win a war and still get some. They're not mutually exclusive.
I mean, it's true, but I mean, he's just such a skis ball about
He
it.
is. He totally is.
And
Yeah.
and so she has her moment at the beginning where she's directing things to a certain point. Although when Han leaves, he doesn't report to her that he's leaving. He actually reports to this other general that he's leaving.
And she's mean mugging him
Well, I mean,
when she sees him, like,
the whole setup. I remember watching it as a kid and just being like, oh, greatest love story ever told, or whatever. And when I was watching it this time, I was just annoyed the whole effing time. I was annoyed. And, this whole thing about, I know she loves me, so I just need to make her realize that she loves me. So I'm going to force myself on her every opportunity I got. That's what I kept reading.
And if
Well, and
only-
that's why she's so mad. She's
Well-
like, dude, just leave me alone.
and if only
Just
she'd
drove
stop
me
being a shrew, is how it's being portrayed from Han's point of view. Is if only she let go, if only she let loose, then
if she
she'd
admitted, is what I
if
kept
she
reading.
admitted.
If she kept
Yeah.
admitted that she actually loves me, then we could get past this tete-a-tete.
Well, there were
that we're
some
having.
snide comments. You could use a good kiss, like
Oh my
Oh,
god,
yes. I
that
mean,
is a
they're just-
fist in the face.
like seriously.
And again, for me, this was
Totally fits me
literally
in the
the
face.
first time I've ever watched this film, and I've watched it a lot, that I had this much of a reaction to it. I was really, so annoyed. And then the rest of the time, she's like, oh, the ice is falling. Oh, the birds outside the Millennium Falcon.
Dude,
Oh,
I would have screamed if that Minoc would have shoved its face in
my
mine
God.
like
Okay,
that, too.
fine,
Come on.
fine.
It came out of nowhere.
Once they were
the
outside,
Wookiee didn't
yes.
shriek. Han didn't shriek. C-3PO didn't shriek. So
Are you
if there
kidding me?
had been-
C-3PO did totally shriek.
I don't think you
Get
shrieked.
out of here.
So,
Shoo,
no,
shoo.
but not the way that she did. So if there had been equal opportunity shrieking, fine.
Wookiee,
But she was the only thing in that thing that she was screaming and whining her whole way through
Wookiee
that
whined a
damn
lot.
movie.
Wookiee did whine a lot.
he
But
did.
that's
He
just him
cried.
talking.
That, yeah.
Oh,
No,
he cried
he
a couple
cried. He
times.
He cried.
Everybody was sad.
When Han goes into the...
Well,
Oh,
okay,
heartbreaking.
He's just...
But
No,
he's
not just
afraid.
then. Not just then. When they closed the doors on Han and Luke
Yes.
at
Yeah.
night, when R2 got blasted and disappeared, and he's like, "Where are you?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Never mind, I'm going to keep walking, even
Yes.
though I know you are just behind me." C3PO. I always invert him, but so
Yes.
he cried several times.
I have to
Yes,
say,
but that's
Chew-
not the same thing as being like, oh, the ice is falling. Oh, the scary birds are around. I mean, come on.
No, you're
I
right.
mean, at that point, she was like, oh, I would say at that point, she's like, oh, I don't have that much responsibility, but he's still a dick. But, maybe I'll go for it for a second. Nah, never mind. Never mind. Not worth it.
That was totally the internal conversation she
Yeah.
had about it.
Right.
well, there's really nothing else to do. And no.
And then, of course, as it comes to pass, she that what Han has been saying all along actually is true, and she does really love him, right? That's what we learned
Yeah.
through the story.
It's
right?
too bad she had to kiss Luke to prove a point.
Oh, her brother.
What? What? I did not know that. I'm being sarcastic.
she's being sarcastic. But still.
Oh my god.
Thank God she's the spoiler queen.
Oh my god.
Well, if you watch
And we don't have a
episodes
special guest
1
in the
through
studio.
3,
Right. You do know. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody analyzed that relationship between Han and Leia, and they're like, it'd never work out because their backgrounds are too different, and this and that and that.
Has anyone read the book, the romancing of
Yes.
the romance of? So how does that
Ew,
go?
what?
There's a romance novel?
Well, no, but it's the
It's
story.
a courtship of Princess
Yeah.
Leia.
There we go.
And I can't
Ooh,
remember
sounds awful.
exactly where it takes place. Is it between the
Is
two?
it on-
No, it's one of the first books after Return
yep.
of the Jedi, and it's pretty. Han gets very, very grabby because he doesn't like that Leia is being courted by. What is his name? He's got one of those weird Z type names. He's pretty schmaltzy and quite frankly gross because it's just like so schmaltzy.
Yeah.
And Leia's totally playing it up to be like, well, I'm a princess. I have to marry him because it's an arranged marriage now. And it's just, ugh.
It sounds like Luke
Oh, I'm
was her
sorry.
best
You
friend.
won a war, and now you have to go through with an arranged marriage?
Yuck.
Your planet's gone anyway. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. Your planet's gone.
Your
What
planet's
kind of
gone.
alliance are you trying to make?
Yeah, it's pretty yuck. But obviously they do end up
They do
together.
end up together with kids and all.
Oh, I'm so relieved.
Epic
those of you-
eye roll.
You like that I'm a
Eye roll.
scoundrel. Like, ooh.
No,
If a
like
guy said that to me on the dance floor, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Bouncer. This gentleman is bothering me.
Either you bounce him or I will.
Although I have to say, even though this viewing again, I was younger, I was like, I was shipping that left and right,
oh, I totally ship it.
right. But watching it this time, and I was having this reaction I'd never had before. When he does kiss her, force himself, basically kisses her in the hallway, I still swooned. Whatever.
Oh yeah, how can you
Still
not?
swooned. Still
How
swooned.
can you not?
He's handsome, and he
Yeah.
has a starship. Like, whatever.
He's actually like an awesome pilot. Like
Yeah.
he is outrunning the Empire in a ship that doesn't work for the whole movie. Like
I'm-
mostly successfully.
I can see why that's still
No.
swoon worthy.
It's
If only because
romantic.
she really does want
she
it.
really
Yeah,
does.
she does.
Which opens up a whole other door
Right. Yes, it does.
conversation that we probably don't want to. I mean, in terms of the whole, do they really want it? Do they want? But
Right.
for the purpose of this, I can see why you still swooned.
I still swooned. I did. And I do have an interesting story to tell about the I love you. when
I
we get
know.
there. It was not written that way.
I know that
We
was an
know.
ad lib.
It was an ad lib. When he says I know, in the script it was she says I love you and he says I love you too. And Kirshner didn't want it shot that way because he felt that it gave Leia the power and he wanted Han to have the power in the relationship, and so he wouldn't shoot it that way. And I guess they were really tired and he kept demanding more or whatever, and they were going to do one last take before they broke for lunch. And Han, that's just what came out of his mouth, and that's what they
It's
went with.
perfect. I wrote "Damn it, Han" in all caps.
I didn't like it.
I love it.
I didn't like it for precisely the reason why Kirshner didn't want the other way.
Right.
Because it totally suggested it was a one-sided love.
I don't think so.
By him not reciprocating verbally, even in that era, in this kind of story. I mean, there's totally nonverbal cues of someone loving the other. We don't need to hear it all the time between two characters. But in that situation where, as far as we're concerned, he's going to die, as far as we know, he could die. Her saying I love you and him saying I know is basically like in character, totally in character. But it makes me think the subtext of that is, how could you not?
I don't think it's that. I think it was I love you, and it's an I know, and shit, I'm probably gonna die, and I'm fucking worried about you. I know all these things.
Yeah,
Fuck.
and I could see
No.
how that would be interpreted.
I do think it's a "How could you not?"
That's what I feel like.
I totally do, but also I
with
think
this other, like, several other parentheses.
no. I
of
mean, I
everything
think he
else
clearly.
textually.
Like, I think it's pretty clear that he loves her too because he's pursuing her so hard, and then right before he goes into the
She
the
finally admits
carbonite. He's telling Chewie that he's got to take care of her. He's giving his best friend responsibility to make sure that the woman that he loves is taken care of.
'Cause
You don't
she
just
can't
do
do it
that
herself.
because she can't do it herself, right?
She kind of demonstrated that in the
Right.
movie.
As she
Yeah.
was screaming,
As
running
far
down
as
the
he
ice
knew.
hallway. Mhm.
But I think it's both of Bri and Cassie is put together.
extremes.
Yeah, I think it's all of that. Yeah.
And for me, I think it's because in his mind, he has known all along that she loved him
Yeah.
and just wouldn't ever admit it.
Yeah.
And now in this extreme moment, she's finally admitting it because she's afraid she's going to lose him, that he's going to die and the freezing in the carbonite isn't going to work. And he's being like, yeah, I've known all along that you love
It's like,
me.
duh,
I know.
girl.
Yeah, like, duh.
Duh.
Every time I harassed you, that was my as you wish. Like,
I was gonna say he
Nice
never
reference.
really, and this will be my last thing about it, but he never really demonstrated love. He certainly demonstrated attraction and lust, but it was not sufficient
Do
demonstration.
you really think that a smuggler and a scoundrel is going to pursue a princess that hard when he's got a bounty on his head?
He
Okay,
clearly,
maybe, probably, definitely. Yes.
if
Now that
it
it's out
meant
of
that
my mouth.
You can't look at some of the other things. Like, so instead of making his exit to be able to go clear his name with Jabba the Hutt, he does
He's
go
staying
back
around.
and stays and
That's
saves her when
true.
she can't get on her transport and takes her out of the Millennium Falcon. So I think he does, in his own certain very domineering, I'm in control ways, does demonstrate that he cares for her. Yeah.
yeah, and he never outright really says it, but he's just like, you can't get enough of me. You really like me. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to give you a hard time because I'm probably not good enough for you.
He's like a school child. He's like a kid on the playground.
I'm probably not good enough for you.
Oh.
That's not true.
But come on, without that, like, I have a whole section of notes just that's Han Leia, and it's literally just it's just dialogue.
Oh my gosh, I have so
There's a
many
lot of it.
quotes.
They had good
Dialogue.
dialogue. Even
lot
sometimes
of
when it
cute
made me cringe in some cases, there were some really good exchanges
Yeah.
between them.
Would it help if I got out and pushed? It might.
It might.
Yeah. A lot of it is very much the tete-a-tete. Is the
yeah.
back and forth, for
The
sure.
Jack and
I think
Diane.
that it very
Yes.
much did set the tone for many films that followed to have that kind of relationship
you're
between
right.
love interests.
I think you're right.
You know, not the Notebook style, but
I
I'm
still
trying to
haven't
think
seen
of a
that.
good, very kind of a
Yeah,
love
Woody
story.
Allen kind of started it too in the 70s. It is a style. It is a very popular style for sure, but they made it maybe more mainstream,
Yeah,
being Star Wars.
for sure.
I do like
sure.
in the corridor scene when they finally kiss. He says, "Your worship, I'm only trying to help," and she just flat out is like, "Would you stop calling me that?" And he does totally back down. He's like, "Sure, Leia, you're taking all the fun out of this right now."
Yeah.
He did have a couple nicknames for her that
Yeah,
implied that self-conscious
your
aspect that you're
worship
talking
and
about,
your
Bri.
highnessness are my favorite.
Yeah, your royalty. He had a cup, like a few. Just
I think
toss them out.
at some point he might even said worshipfulness. Like,
he
just
did.
da 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 da's on it. It's obviously on his mind.
Clearly,
Well, one of the things that Kirshner says a lot in the commentaries is he talks a lot about he was always looking for the comedic moment, which, not to harken back to prior podcasts, but did make me think of RoboCop 2,
Yeah.
where, boy, that desire to go for the comedic moment did not work for him very well. But I think that's one of the reasons why this
think it
film
works
is
so
very
well.
charming for so many people, is because it is so funny in so many ways.
well, and you kind of need it too in this one because in this movie, like nothing is going right for anybody anywhere.
Oh my god, can we talk about the major punching bag of the movie, Luke?
Oh my god!
From the beginning, that Wampa attack had to be staged because he was in a terrible car accident.
I actually read into that though. There's like all of this conflicting information out there. Apparently, nobody actually knows anymore. Like
So
for
Leia, so Carrie Fisher on the commentary,
Uh-huh.
she doesn't talk about the Wampa attack being there only because he had a car accident, but we all know he did absolutely have a car accident. The scene that she talks about is the scene where he's being repaired post Wampa attack, and that the way that they had to stage that and do that was very careful because he was so badly hurt in that car accident.
What happened? I didn't know there was a car accident.
He's in a car accident, and that was looked it up because we had put it on our list to discuss today, and I'd heard this story that the Wampa attack was added. He was in a car accident. either no, but there's all this debate about when the car accident actually was.
Well, it was before the Christmas special for sure.
There's debate about that on the internet too.
Really?
Yeah,
There was a Christmas special?
Yeah.
But he was in a car accident at some point and it damaged his face. He had to have surgery on his face.
Whoa.
So all that, when you see him in the med thing, all that's real.
And
I
it looks
was
real.
like, that looks intense.
That's really good makeup.
And I think that, you know, whatever the debate is on the internet, like I feel like it definitely happened and he was like surgically repaired during that scene because his face looks surgically
No, she
repaired.
does say that.
Yeah.
Well, unless, you know, I mean, she was taking drugs and also maybe she didn't remember, but Carrie Fisher does say that specifically.
Well, but
We
so
won't go
anyway,
into that
so
either.
The statement, like, there's a repeated statement from Mark Hamill about what happened during the accident because there's not a ton of information out there. Is that he was driving? It sounds like he was driving alone. He says he was on the quote unquote wrong freeway, but he like flipped his car and broke his face. Basically, is what happened.
And people
And I'm
do
sure they
tell
must have
stories.
freaked.
Yeah.
20th century.
Oh, I'm
Fox must
sure.
have freaked.
So the George Lucas, the guy who's the special effects guy on the commentaries, they all talk about the Wampa, but none of them ever mention anything about that.
Well, that
So-
would probably be because of this shrouded in secrecy business that apparently is going on.
So back to it.
Anyway.
Luke gets attacked by a Wampa.
Yes.
He goes out to fight, and his partner dies, and then he crashes, and then he leaves and crashes again, and then he leaves to help his friends and gets dismembered and throws himself off a ledge and just falls onto a spaceship. Like, he's just kind of... He's like a tumbleweed being blown by the wind down a road, just hitting everything.
Whining
Yes.
the entire time.
Yes.
But
Poor
maybe
guy.
he has good reason to whine.
He's just the punching bag throughout the whole
Luke.
entire
Poor
episode.
Yeah.
Luke.
Yeah. He was.
I don't know. I felt no sympathy.
Damn.
He is pretty brash. Like, when he's running around in Cloud City, he's just like, oh, there's no one here. Totally normal. I'm just going to run around with this slow-ass astromech droid behind me. No one's going to notice this dude with the droid behind him carrying a blaster just sneaking down the corridor. Like, it was so clearly a trap. So clearly a trap.
But it was totally required to demonstrate his character.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Oh, sure.
absolutely.
Sure.
I mean,
They
As
say
dumb
he's
as it
not
was.
ready the whole time, and obviously he's not ready. He handles it very poorly.
Yeah.
Although,
But with the right intentions.
yes,
Right.
and ultimately in the end, that all the mistakes he makes along the way make him prepared for his final stuff he has to do
Well,
later.
and you talking about him getting beat up, too. The fight scene between him and Vader, he's just totally getting his ass handed to him the entire time. My favorite part is he's like, you'll find I'm full of surprises. And then Vader immediately disarms him. Like, immediately he loses his
Disarm,
lightsaber.
literally.
Yeah, well,
No,
yes,
not
that's
yet.
a little bit later.
That's later. But literally, his lightsaber goes flying across the room and he gets shoved into the carbonite thing. Luke. Those are some really good surprises, buddy.
I'm full of surprises. You'll be surprised at how bad I am at this.
And in his defense, Vader is fighting dirty, but he is a Sith Lord, so like
Well,
he
yeah,
should have been
duh.
prepared
Yeah.
for that.
But
And
he
does.
wasn't
I mean,
because he didn't stay with
obviously-
Yoda.
No, he didn't.
There was no time.
And he has more right, he has more skills. Luke hasn't learned the
Yeah, he doesn't know.
move objects very well.
He can
and
barely pick
he
up
can-
rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
He was balancing like a bunch of things.
Come on, I can do that.
Oh.
I can do a one-handed handstand with my leg at 90 degrees and pick up rocks with the
lifting
force. Come on.
R2D2
Yes.
and rocks.
Yes.
Child's play.
Yeah.
Child's play.
Come on
like
now.
Cat in the Hat. You know, it's all
Simple, very simple.
very simple.
So so we argue that he may be too whiny. Some people think like maybe that's a little bit justified.
I think some of it's
But-
justified.
Sure, but
Yeah.
I do. I couldn't help but think, especially the scenes on Dagobah, where as much as they gave Hayden Christensen, if I'm remembering
got
that
it.
correctly, thank you, such a hard time for even though his character is supposed to be a teenager, and we don't necessarily have to get into the acting skills of Hayden Christensen right now, but they gave him a really hard time because he came off as so whiny, or so many people said he came off so whiny in those films. To me, the whole time that they're on Dagobah, I just kept thinking,
Luke is totally the whiny
he's
kid.
just so whiny. He's like such a whiny teenager.
He was whiny and
Poor
New Hope.
Yoda.
Ugh.
Poor Yoda having to put up with that day in and day out.
Whine.
I am
as soon as-
totally ready.
And as soon as he arrives, he's just like, "You can't help me, little guy. I'm looking for Yoda."
I'm looking for a great warrior.
You guys have
okay?
your hands on your hips.
That's
pretty
how
funny.
we do snotty teens. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the official pose.
You wouldn't know anything about it.
Oh, I just did. I found him whiny.
I can see why they cast Hayden Christensen in terms of looks, because he did.
Yeah, they have a
did look
similar
like-
look.
Yeah.
He's terrible.
Again, I'm not gonna. Maybe
I just
someday
have
we'll
to
watch
say
those movies and we can talk
We're
about.
gonna
No,
have
we
to do
will.
all three of them as one
We
shot
will.
because I will not do 3 episodes about those.
I'm surprised anyone's willing to do one, to be honest.
No, I think it's worth a discussion. That's for sure.
Yeah. Dagobah often felt, in terms of story, it just felt like it really meandered. As important as it was to establishing this, the character and his journey and where he is yet to go, it broke up the action in a way that kind of pulled me back. And that's why I was really surprised that the movie was eventually regarded as highly as it is.
I think you develop an appreciation for the Dagobah scenes, though, even though Luke is being whiny. There's a lot of really good stuff going on.
Oh,
in there.
there's
when I
good
was-
stuff, but it still felt like the timing. Like every time we were pulled out, it was to break up the action with Han and Leia. But the momentum of the story all automatically halted, probably by design.
So
That's
yeah,
where they
for-
always lose me as a kid. As
Yeah.
a kid, I
See,
just couldn't
I
pay
was fascinated
attention.
with those scenes as a kid. And again, commentary just because I listened to them. George Lucas, I mean, for him, that's all the exposition about how the Force works.
Yeah.
That's how he got it in there. And as a kid, I think for whole generations of kids, not only did they have Sir Run Shaw and all that kind of stuff, but a fascination with Zen, martial arts, that kind of stuff. This film and those scenes added to a fascination about Eastern philosophy and all of that kind of stuff. And so when I was a kid, I loved those scenes. I'm with you now, watching it now. You're just sort of like, can we get back to the snarky, dialogue between Leia and
Or
Han?
is it
I can
just
listen to Yoda being wise for days.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely it was necessary to show Yoda's wisdom and to show, like you said, how the Force exists, because that is such a huge part of the Star Wars universe. I just thought, I was surprised that it was handled the way that it was. In a way that was, I feel like they probably could have added some more stakes to Dagobah beyond the.
It did
Well,
lack tension.
It lacked a lot of tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the R2 gets scooped up and spat out, but beyond that,
Yeah,
That's
I mean, the big payoff is the foreshadowing of the Luke, I am your father, right?
which is just character. I mean, that's a very
Yeah.
character-based sort of drama, and
Yeah.
very well done for what it needed to do.
And it does
Yeah.
set up, as he's taking off, it sets up the episode 3 reveal that we already spoiled.
Yeah.
Or the episode 6 reveal that we already spoiled. Because, Yoda makes that very cryptic remark about there being another.
Yeah.
There's another,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But it all because I've definitely viewed those scenes very differently depending on my age.
And it could just be because I already, thanks to living in the United States, I already know about the Force.
I don't think you just have to live in the United States.
Thanks
to know
for
about
living
the
Have
on
to be alive.
Planet Earth. Yes,
Yeah,
living on
exactly.
planet Earth, I know about the Force, so I didn't need a lot of
Force.
backstory.
Indeed.
Well, you know all about the midi-chlorians already, so.
Oh,
Which
God, let's
are
not
not
even.
mentioned on Dagobah at all. Think of metachlorians. Oh,
Because they don't exist.
yeah.
That's right.
But of course, Cassie has no idea what we're talking about.
Didn't you watch the first 3 episodes?
I can't remember. What are those things?
It's the things that make you a Jedi.
Yeah. That's so Anakin has like more metachlorians than
Than
Qui-Gon
anyone ever.
Is it DNA?
Although I will say
His mom had
no,
like an
it's
epic
this-
yeast infection and she gave birth to a
Exactly.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, watching the yeast infection thing is awesome.
You said that no so nonchalantly. It was just like
Rewatch episode 1 because Liam Neeson like tests Anakin's blood and automatically knows he's going to be a Jedi because he's got so many midichlorians.
More midichlorians than anyone ever.
Yeah,
even more than Yoda.
Yeah.
What a Mary Sue. Jeez.
But
Anyway.
So total aside, watching this made me. There are a lot of, if you play the complete saga on Lego Star Wars, the video game.
That's such a fun game.
There are the freaking Dagobah scenes are hard.
I never got that far. I gave up.
Mm.
I gave up
Hard.
during the first 3 episodes because those games are fun, but they have some control problems.
Well, and there are some parts that are hard.
Yeah.
Especially 2-player.
Yeah.
Oh, I always play 2-player. It's the best way to play. Sometimes Ray
Except for
even
when
lets
you're
me be
trying to
first
run in
player.
different directions.
I could say the same about Zelda.
That's a different
Spoiler
podcast.
alert.
sorry.
I think Luke's strongest moment was probably when he was like, "I don't want to hang out with you, Dad," and threw himself off of a ledge. And
Yeah.
he didn't. There's no way to know if you're going to survive that.
No,
He shouldn't have survived.
He felt the force. He knew exactly what was going to happen.
What? I see no indication of that.
Look at his face. He's like, I'm done with this shit. What's around
And
me?
me,
I'm
what can
going
I
down that
do?
garbage
Yeah.
chute right there.
That's
Boom.
how I read it too.
But he didn't think past going into the garbage chute.
No.
That
Which
was
is-
his problem.
Which is why he reaches out to
Leia.
I was like, this guy's tumbling around like a tumbleweed, an idiotic
No,
tumbleweed.
he knew he's like getting ready. I'm posing. he's like getting ready.
Olympic gymnast.
Superman.
She does look like an
maybe.
Olympic gymnast. Again, that was what I felt like was a coincidence, but I guess he felt the force when it came time to ditch Dad, but
Yeah.
not so much when he was fighting Dad.
That was like the one moment in the whole movie where he has absolute confidence in something he's about to do. He's like, "Fuck
and yet it
this shit,
still
I'm
would
going."
have been screwed up had they been too far out of range to save him.
Oh,
Well, of
yeah.
course.
He didn't
He
even
was
that
taking
far.
a big old
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
On the Force.
that's right.
Yes. Well, that's what you do.
That's what makes you a Jedi.
So those people who are entrenched in that philosophy and that culture, that's what you do.
Yes, but you have to have a little bit more experience than Mr.
Apparently,
Mr.
he's gone through a
Skywalker.
traumatic experience, and it has heightened his
his senses.
senses.
That damn hand flew off, and he was like,
His facial expressions during that
Oh, I
scene.
know.
Oh my god.
It's incredible.
Oh my god.
Mark Hamill just went for it.
Like, did that happen because of the car accident? That he could do that with his mouth?
That's
His-
lips are
Anguish.
going in every
Yeah,
direction.
his lips were like moving independently.
even before that, he's like, that's not true. He was all
His voice cracks, and you're just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
You know, I have a habit of sending people the clip of Darth Vader going "no" at the end of episode 3, but I should start using the Luke Skywalker screaming "no" clip because that's actually a more epic.
That's impossible. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah,
And okay, totally inappropriate, but half the time in that scene, he looks like a fucking chipmunk or a hamster because his 2 front teeth are like sticking out like little hamster. Yes, exactly.
Now I have to look.
Okay. Sorry.
Too many complex emotions in this movie. That's why I didn't like it as a kid.
But his arm got cut off, and instantly I was like, hey, Darth Vader's hand got cut off. His right hand got cut off. And
Nice parallels,
I
right?
was like, oh my gosh. And he cut off the right arm of the Yeti monster.
oh, I never caught that.
A hand for a hand for a hand.
And also the hand got cut off in the episode in A New Hope. Also, the guy in the bar.
A hand for a hand
Was
for a
it-
hand
was
for a
it-
hand. What was everybody's favorite creature from the movie?
I picked Minox.
And those were the bat-like
Yeah.
creatures that.
They're so gross, and they've got like those gross suckery mouths.
Oh, I love them. They're like something from
With,
a
like,
nightmare.
Little
Yes.
eyeballs moving around while he's sucking on the window.
It looks like a dirty mop.
Yeah, a dirty mop. That's good. They're gross.
Indeed.
It was warranted to scream when they actually made contact, but just slapping on the glass.
If I looked up and saw that thing pressed against
You
my
better
window,
believe I'd be screaming bloody murder.
But to be fair, the men would be screaming too, but because it was 1980, that wasn't cool. So warranted screaming. Okay, now what's your favorite creature?
Well, that was Minox.
That was
her
mine.
mine.
Oh,
That was
Minox,
my
that's right.
favorite.
Just kidding.
Your turn.
My turn?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the Wampa, the Yeti guy. Even though we only saw him for a little bit.
I like his horn.
Did you know that there are different kinds of wampas? My favorite is the swamp wampa.
There's a
Wampa.
The swampa.
mine.
I'll be
the
honest. For like the past 4 years, I've been like band name Swampa. Anybody?
You might
I'll
have
be
some
the
takers.
drummer.
Yeah.
Swampa.
I'll be the drummer.
There you go. There's a nice cosplay.
Swampa.
did we
The
get
Swampa
everyone?
band.
Oh, the Swampa band.
The
That's
Swampa band.
perfect.
Swampas.
Yeah.
2015.
Ew,
So-
Bri, yours. Oh.
Oh, whatever. The tauntaun.
Oh,
It is
I
a
love
beast of
tauntauns.
burden.
It is.
Yeah.
I love the noises they make.
They're smelly. They're basically
They talk
llamas.
about
They're
what
true like
llamas
they
are.
llamas.
recorded
Camel.
for that. No, I can't remember.
Who-
Darn
oh,
it.
I wish you would
Sorry.
remembered.
I can't
Because
remember.
that's brilliant.
There's
I looked
also a
them up.
great
They
story.
actually spit at each other's eyes.
That's a llama behavior.
Yeah, so like they're totally just space llamas that are
That's
crossed with
awesome.
chocobos. They're also reptilian, but they have warm blood and they give live birth. But like they have to feed
And
the
you
babies
gotta-
like baby birds.
You got to tame the mama before you can tame the herd.
You gotta
All I
take the alpha
know
female.
is he cut that sucker open and
And they smell
stuffed
bad.
Luke
Which is such a
in
funny
it.
line.
Oh, I know. What a great
well,
line.
yeah, saved his
Oh,
life.
I did like that line.
Survivalist.
So would you like
Yeah.
me to let you die, Cassie?
I could just
if
let
we're
you
ever
freeze
on
to
Hoth
death
together,
after you're
and you've
attacked by the
stupidly
snow
gone
wampa.
off and did something
Well,
stupid. 'cause
He
that's what
didn't
you
do anything stupid in that case. Fine, let me die, jerks.
Well, you don't want us to shove you inside the life-saving tauntaun.
And then
so-
stick me in a tube in a diaper to regenerate me.
In front of everybody.
In front of
no
everyone.
less.
Everybody.
Yeah, scuba
Apparently,
diving.
he almost died there, Mr. Hamill, because something broke on the set and a huge thing of glass came
my
down
God.
onto the thing just after they pulled him out of the tank for the scene.
What
Holy
the
crap.
fuck?
Oh my god.
That's terrifying.
It's one of the stories that they told.
What were they doing? Or not doing, as the case was, apparently.
Oh,
That
I
is a
don't know.
terrifying story.
It was one. It
Like,
was
that's
better than Carrie Fisher rambling on about therapy sessions, whatever.
What about you, Alice?
So snake dragon, which is the creature that swallows R2 and then spits him out, and there are also a variety of snake dragons as well, apparently.
Well, snake dragons
I
are
can see
dragon
the
snake.
little dragon
Dragon
larva
snake,
getting
dragon
onto
snake.
a
You're right.
Yeah, I
it's
can see
dragon
that.
snake. Yeah,
That's a cool
it's
name.
dragon snake.
Nobody picked the giant asteroid worm thing.
No,
I
I know.
thought
right?
about it, but like it's so creepy looking that I don't want to think about it.
It's creepy. They
It's
use
got
stop
Minox living
motion
inside of it.
animation, and it was another convenient situation that I felt was lame.
Cassie thinks it's lame.
Cassie doesn't like it.
I
oh, so
didn't
you
like
don't
him.
like giant space worms?
I'm warmist.
Worm is
Cassie's a worm.
Man, we're just ist everything
It's
today.
everything, yeah. I feel like I felt cheated because it was a creature that was used to ramp up the attention again.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it was a second of stop motion BS, and then that was it. I was like, what was that creature's name? We don't know.
We
His
could look
name
it
was
up.
Mr. Robinson.
I looked him
He
up.
has a wife and kids.
I don't feel like I need to know everything. Do I need to
don't-
know everything in a
no,
movie?
I
I
don't.
don't need to know
I don't need
everything.
to know everything, but it was like they're like, oh, I guess we've had them in this ship in this hole for a while. Let's try to move them forward.
Well, they can't just hide in the asteroid forever. Something's got to chase them out of the asteroid.
Or they could just say, hey, I think the coast is clear. We've been in this asteroid for a while.
By
Well,
the
that
way,
wouldn't have been anywhere near as fun, and we wouldn't have gotten to hear Leia scream because of the why-not.
Your favorite part.
by the way, that's not how asteroid fields work.
Well,
What?
come
You
on.
mean that whole sequence was not scientifically accurate? My mind is
No.
blown.
Someone get Neil deGrasse Tyson on this right now.
Oh,
I feel so
did
betrayed.
find it very funny. So every time so a lot of the commentary that Lucas gives is him waxing poetic about being able to add his shit back into the movie. There's quite a bit of that
Oh, my
commentary.
God.
But he always calls it a space opera, and Kirshner calls it a fairy tale. And I just found that interesting.
That is
That
interesting.
they had these very different outlooks on what the ultimateness of the story was. But it was also quite interesting to hear George Lucas talk about the rights and what he was allowed to do and why he let somebody else write it and who that was and how that happened. I mean, the commentary is worth listening to if you have an interest in how these things work, I think.
I should listen
I would
to
I think it's
recommend
cool
it.
that he gave his old professor, a solid. I mean, Kirshner was his professor at UCLA.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that either.
Kirshner almost
He also
said,
sent him to Japan afterwards.
Yeah, Kirshner almost said, "No way, this is not." I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was like, "There's no way the sequel could be as good as the first."
Oh.
And apparently his agent was like, "You take that job." Shocker. I know.
And he
True
does.
agent
He says that in the
fashion.
commentary. Actually, now
Yeah.
that you say that, yeah, it's definitely worth a listen.
So, Cassie, final impressions.
It was a good movie. It was. I can see why it's iconic. I can see why it had continued this sort of effect on pop culture and on the way we look at sci-fi. There were some lines from Dagobah that I just wanted to mention really fast. The two most, well, no, that's one line. One line from Dagobah and the iconic "I am your father," but
Right.
of course it's fractured. People always add Luke.
That's right.
I am your
It's
father.
not Luke.
And it's not Luke, I'm your father, which I'd heard, but now I was like offended.
You're like, everyone gets this wrong.
I was like, what's going on here? But the other one that is really iconic and that I'd heard plenty of times, including from Alice, is do or do not. There is no try.
It's no try.
That's a good motto to live by.
That's a good line.
Yoda says so many great things. And there were some that jumped out at me this time that I was like, I've never, listened to him say that before. Like, you must unlearn what you have learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had some great lines.
And the thing about luminous beings, I'm like, oh.
Very poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good film.
Yeah.
It was a good flick. I can see why people love it. I was not quite as impressed as I thought I would be, but maybe after I see Return of the
I was
Jedi.
going to say, are you ready for episode 3 next year? Or episode 6 next year?
Yeah, I'm ready to.
I get it wrong
I know,
every
me
time.
too. I just
And
noticed the crap
I was
out
like,
of me.
nope, I'm not seeing episode 3. But yeah, no, maybe after Return of the Jedi, I'll be able to see what everyone sees.
I mean, Kirshner is in an interesting spot because the arc is so limited, right? Because he's having to pick up, because of course Lucas knew there were going to be 3 films, and he doesn't really have a clean end because of course it has to just lead into the next film. So I thought that was very interesting. But I don't know what the hell mood I was in watching it. I still like the movie. It's actually, I think, still my favorite. But boy, I was in a different space when I watched it this time.
What about you, Megan? Final thoughts?
I love Chewie.
She's making.
I was going to say the same thing.
She's making.
I'm
Chewie
making
and Han
Han
make
and
out.
Chewie hug because they're
She's-
best good friends. Actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about is I love how in Cloud City, after Han is gone, Leia and Chewie are just instantly bonded.
Totally.
They both go after Lando. They're not communicating verbally, but they're on the same page. I'm gonna screw up this guy because I'm really mad at him.
And Chatty
they're
Cathy
both blinded
R2D2
by
is like,
rage.
no.
I know,
And they're both
3PO's
like, no,
You
shut
mean
up.
C-3PO?
3PO's over there. Trust him.
C-3PO, yeah,
trust
C-3PO.
him.
C-3PO, R2D2, they're the same thing, right?
Chewie's like,
Oh, you watch yourself.
Chewie's the
lightning coming
unsung
down.
hero.
He really
Through
is.
the whole movie, he's a bro to everybody involved.
Yep.
He gives everybody a hand. He cares about everyone. He hugs people. He's emotional. Chewie is the friend you want on your side because
He is.
even when things go to shit, he's gonna be there for you.
That's right.
He's a sweet guy.
And I love how when they're escaping and Leia's like, we've got to turn around. I know where Luke is. And Lando starts protesting. Chewie's just like, rah!
Which, of course, everyone understood. What
And
that
like, okay. Yeah, there's no question. Chewie is very much like R2 in that
Yeah,
what
you
he's
know.
saying at all times.
And he talks about, again, listen to the commentary. It's worth it.
Cool. I definitely will.
Cool. Drinking game rules.
Drinking game. Oh my god!
I tried to
Drinking
limit
game
myself.
rules. I
'cause
think.
I
Well,
have
and I
so
think
many.
there are so many, and I imagine there are some really obvious ones. So I bet a lot of us have similar ones.
Well, and we do still have plenty of rules from the first time, so we don't need to add too many. But we do.
Well, I think that we should make an attempt to make these very Empire specific because there are definitely some good Empire specific ones. So, for
Okay.
example, choke deaths.
Oh, there are
Oh,
lots
yeah.
of
There are
those.
Oh,
lots
yeah.
of good choke deaths in
He's
this
such
one.
a bastard.
So
You
I would
think-
say take a shot for every choke death.
That's a
That
good
would
one.
be my first one.
You would think people would not want to rise in ranks, right? Like
Oh,
people would
shit,
just
yeah.
I'm
stop.
like, oh, I'm a janitor and I'm fine with that.
Exactly. It's good.
Yep.
I'm good.
Oh, one of my drinking game rules: take a shot whenever the Falcon's hyperdrive fails. It makes that
Yeah.
noise.
Every time you roll your eyes at Han and Leia, take a drink.
Yes.
Or every time Han Solo makes you hyperventilate because you're like,
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Pick your poison on that
great.
one.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, one or the other. Whenever someone repeats a line that someone else said, like, it's not my fault, between Han and Lando, or search your feelings, you know it to be true.
I have a bad feeling about this. It's a trap. Those are
Yeah.
also repeated a couple times.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Well, so along that same line, if you take a sip for every quip that goes back and forth between Han and Leia in that vein.
Cool.
I made that 2 drinks whenever they start snarking each other up because you got to take a drink for each one of them, you know,
Oh, nice. I like it.
Oh, dang.
because it's very back
Or
and
if
forth.
you happen to be watching the film with your significant other. So it'd be Matt would have to drink for Han, and then you'd have to drink for Leia.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
I
that's
like
what
Yes,
you were
that's what-
motioning.
that's-
Got it. Take a drink whenever Chewie yowls.
That's a lot.
I have drink continuously whenever Luke is talking to himself. So as soon as he starts talking, just drink. And when he's finally done, stop.
Oh, no.
He talks to
Funny
himself
one.
quite
I
a
love
bit.
That one. That one's good.
What I think this was in actually the first one, but I'll say it again because it still bears repeating. Whenever someone tells C-3PO to shut up, or they shut him down.
I think that happens way more in this one.
I think so too.
happens
a
You
lot.
got the nice Han like putting his.
That is
Yeah.
such
Which makes
a great
no
moment.
sense whatsoever, but it's
I
such
know,
a great
right?
moment.
Everyone shuts him up at least once, except for R2.
Take a drink whenever Yoda is being wise. Because my other Yoda drink rule is to take a drink whenever he makes you giggle because he's being so goofy. Like, I love at the beginning his
Well, then
laugh.
you would be drinking
He's like,
through the entire Dagobah system. Or
Okay, I have one. When you hear I am your father, take 3 shots, contemplate your life, and say, that's impossible!
love it.
That's pretty perfect. Take a drink if there's a tauntaun on screen.
Shot when the tauntaun dies.
Oh, pour one out
Pour
for
one
your
out for the
homie.
tauntaun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, did he just run him to death? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he
or
froze
it got
to
too
death.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their blood freezes when it gets too cold. Or they go into hibernation. He might have just killed a tauntaun.
But it's for
Oops.
Luke, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
well.
first best
trying to
bud.
save
I'd
his
kill a
best
tauntaun
friend.
for you.
Oh,
Thank
here's
you.
here's
And
a
shove me in it.
continuous one.
Yes.
Every time the Millennium Falcon makes a maneuver that makes you a little motion sick, take a drink because it
Yes.
happens constantly.
Yes, and they're not strapped in, and that thing will like flip over. I'm like, that person would have been bouncing all over the
Dead.
place.
All
Or
of
dead.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because this one, I think more than any of the other ones, is all about the dialogue, at least for me. If you are caught quoting dialogue during a scene, you have to take a shot.
That's an excellent one.
Final rule for every single movie always, the R2 scream, take a shot.
Is it the high pitched one?
Yeah.
You're
That was
pretty good
impressive.
at that.
I have a lot of practice. I can't make a Wookiee noise to save my life, but R2.
I can't either. Matt's pretty good at it, but I just sound like a drowning cat if I try to do a Wookiee.
My ex does a really good job. He does a good work.
Yeah.
I just sound like
Because
I'm
it's got a
gargling.
roll. Yeah, it's got a gargle a little
Yeah.
bit.
That Wookiee sounds sick.
Vomiting drunk Wookiee.
Because you will be after playing our drinking game.
Oh man.
So before we close out, we do want to remind you about our panels at Phoenix Comic-Con. We have 6 of them, and 4 of them will be live podcast recordings, so we hope you can join us for those.
Are we crazy?
Yes.
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 Crazy in
Just
love
checking.
with
Crazy
doing
like a
this
fox.
podcasting.
Crazy like a bunch of foxes. Hey.
But I'm
So if you want to join us, we're doing an H.P. Lovecraft panel on Thursday. We're calling it Agents of STEM. We're discussing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's going to be on Friday. We're doing an American Horror Story Coven panel. That is one of our live podcast recordings, also on Friday. On Friday evening, we're doing a panel we're calling Squeefest 2014. We're going to objectify all of the beautiful men in sci-fi for an hour and pick the hottest Hottie McHotterton by the end of the panel. On Saturday, we're doing a panel called All Men Must Die, where we're going to discuss Game of Thrones. And then our final panel will be on Sunday, covering the TV show Sleepy Hollow. So we hope you can join us.
Thank you for joining us today. This has been Bri,
Cassie.
Alice.
And Megan.
You can find us at educatinggeeks.com, #educatinggeeks on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and yes, even Google+. We hope you'll join us for our next episode, where we'll be educating Alice about the legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Thanks. Bye.